The Dragon Scourge by M.R.R. Lopez. Part 4.
The Clove, you killed him, she gasped.
The Clove stoically tossed the broken staff aside and stood there with his head bowed and back bent, as if in silent prayer. But the Clove did not regret what he had done. He only regretted that he did not have his father's sword. All he had was a knife. The dead slaver's comrade, who had stood dumbfounded only moments ago, snarled and rushed to strike him down. Though the Clove was sightless, his hand knew the way. A flash of steel caught the light, only for a moment. Faster than the human eye could fathom, the concealed blade took to blood like a fish to water, swimming up and flaying open the slaver's arteries in a matter of milliseconds. Before a drop of blood could fall to the earth, the Clove thrust the blade into the man's throat, ending his life. Throwing the bloody corpse aside, he turned and lunged at the dead man's accomplice. The Clove seized the man by the tunic. Fearing for his life, the slaver grabbed the old woman by her neck. The Clove's knife was sharp, and his hand was quick to avenge. The bloody knife made of steel had no pity, and it pierced Nobetha's heart, sparing the slave trader who had hid behind her. Fresh blood ran over his fingers, but instead of the dying screams of a brute, he heard the surprised gasps of a frail old woman. Seeing the stricken expression of horror come over the blind man's face, the slaver guffawed and let Nobetha's body crumple into his arms. Tears flooded down the Clove's face as he eased the frail old woman to the ground as gently as he could. He wanted to pull the knife out, but that would only make her bleed more. He prayed that he had been off by slim margin, but his hand had been trained well. Nobetha only had moments left, and there was nothing he could do. He couldn't even tell her he was sorry. The Clove lowered his head in shame and in torment as he felt her frail hands move over his cheek, brushing away his tears.
Ever since I was a girl, I had hoped a knife would come, she breathed.
The Clove shook his head. He didn't understand. He wasn't a knight. Tears poured down his face as he desperately tried to apply pressure on the wound. But it was too deep to stop the warm blood from pooling up around his hands. But then, perhaps, in the dismay of all who crowded around to witness the tragedy unfold, Nobetha began to laugh, ever so faintly, as if she had a great secret. Not unlike a chess master before unveiling his game-winning move. In a solemn voice she said, "With the little power that I have left, the last of my strength, I loose a wildfire with my final breath. I take your curse and make it mine. Shine in the dark. Do not do what I could not." As she spoke these words, light filtered into the Clove's tear-filled eyes, and for the first time he saw the kind old woman's weathered face, her long white hair and deep blue eyes, moments before they clouded into gray, sightless orbs. Suddenly, the Clove noticed that Nobetha was holding his father's sword. He opened his mouth to ask how she had found it, but when he glanced up to see her graven features, he knew she was gone. The Clove shakily pulled his bloodied hands away from the wound. It was one thing to bloody a foe, but to be stained with the old woman's blood was more than he could bear. How could he pick up his father's sword while her blood still remained on his hands. He felt ashamed to even hold it. The slaver only laughed at Leclove as he mourned, and without so much as an afterthought to his fallen comrades, he cracked his whip and ordered the slaves to press on. Trembling in wrath, Leclove glanced up at the children shackled in the long chain, herded along like cattle. The sight sickened him. He knew what Nobatha would have wanted. "Slaver!" he yelled. "Release the captives, or die where you stand." The slaver laughed all the more louder, but the second he glanced back, instead of seeing a blind man, he saw two fierce yellow eyes gleaming like the pale harvest moon, staring right back up at him. You're not... What are you?" The Clove slowly lifted the cutlass by its leather black sheath. "Let them go," he repeated in a level tone. The slaves huddled together in a silent terror, uncertain who they should fear more, their master or the strange, menacing man with the yellow eyes, whose hands were covered in blood. The slaver's fingers trembled as his hands went to the hilt of his sword. "They're my property! You're nothing but a thief and a murderer!" he sneered. Leclove somberly slung the leather sheath across his shoulder blades and grimly pulled the bloody knife from Nobatha's chest and slowly rose to his feet. "Then draw your sword, coward." The slaver's hand quickly left the sword hilt and fumbled for the keys. He hurled them into the rows of the terrified slaves. Take them, thief!" he growled. The women and children quickly unshackled themselves, but instead of running away and hiding behind the Clove, they fearfully shrank away and hid behind their cruel master. The Clove looked on, perplexed. He didn't understand. Why didn't they run? The slaver burst out into laughter. "Did you really think they would run to you?" The Clove clenched his teeth. He didn't know what to say. Why would they choose to stay in bondage? Didn't they know there was a better way? He was so angry. "Draw your sword," the Clove snarled. "We have a score to settle." "For that old bag of bones," the slaver chuckled. "You're the one who killed her, not me." The Clove closed his eyes and cracked his knuckles loudly as he held the bloody knife. "She would have spared your life," he declared in a solemn voice. "She was a good woman. She wouldn't have hurt a soul." What is she to me?" the slaver jeered. "Dead," the Clove hissed. The slaves and the spectators who had gathered around shrieked in horror as the slaver fell to his knees, with the blade stuck in his throat. The Clove let out a ear-splitting roar cry that sent all present running for their lives as he drew his sword and sprinted over to the dying man. With a savage roar, he severed the man's head from his shoulders. The Clove stood still, watching while the masses fled from the marketplace. He glanced down to where Nobatha's body lay and lowered his head. He then glanced up at the sky for a moment and moved on. For hours he wandered down the road alone. The crimson blood on his hands and forearms had dried. Nobatha's blood clung to him. Finally he came to a well, where, try as he may, he could not wash the blood from his hands. Somehow, he knew he never would. He pressed on. His footsteps on the lonely path seemed to ring in his ears. Even his breathing seemed to echo. He felt sick, as if he had swallowed a large stone and was stuck in his throat. When night came, he took shelter beneath a large tree and slept in a sitting position with his back propped up against the trunk. He felt numb. When the sun's rays came shining down through the thick canopy the following morning, he didn't stir. Everything he had ever been taught, it seemed, had been crushed before his eyes. He had fought proudly, wanting to destroy the soul who had shown him nothing but kindness. He had tried to avenge her, tried to make things right, but the ones he was trying to set free fled from him as if he were a monster. He shut his eyes. Yes, what else could he be? He had shed innocent blood, blind or no. He could never wash that away from his conscience. The clove didn't so much as stir as he heard the faint rustling leaves and snapping twigs nearby. He wondered who it could be. Perhaps the authorities out looking for him, or friends or family seeking to avenge the blood of the dead men. Albeit he doubted anyone would miss the rat-faced scum. His yellow eyes glanced up with only mild interest at the band of nearly a dozen men that surrounded him. A band of hunters, it appeared, judging by their equipment, with their traps, bows, and arrows. They stared at him with suspicion. A stout, burly-looking man stepped forward. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" he demanded. The clove remained still and did not answer him. "We ain't playing with you, elfling," snapped the hunter on his left. His bright yellow eyes flickered with anger as he rose to his feet. The hunters quickly drew their weapons and notched their arrows, but he didn't so much as blink. "My name is Clove, and I am no elf," he replied coldly. "How about you start by telling us what you're doing here, and where you're hiding the unicorn?" The stocky man on the left demanded. The Clove blinked. "I didn't know they were real. Never seen one before." He was slightly dumbfounded and curious at all the same time. The leader of the group gnashed his teeth beneath his dark, long beard and said, "Its tracks go right through here. You must have seen it. Tell us, or we'll pluck out your eyes and put them in a jar and sell them to the fairies." The threat hardly fazed him, for at that very moment, standing in a distance, stood the most majestic creature he'd ever seen. It was a snow-white horse, with a single gleaming horn spiraling up from its head and long majestic mane that flowed down her large, strong, graceful arched neck. The Clove tilted his head and asked, "Did it look like a big white horse with a horn coming out of his head?" For a moment the unicorn stared back at him, her dark eyes briefly locking onto his. The bearded man sneered and drew a large dirk from his belt and waved it threateningly. "I ain't playing, fool," he growled. Suddenly, the majestic creature reared up on its hind legs and came charging at the hunters, slicing and trampling the thick undergrowth in her wake. Alarmed by the sudden commotion, the man with the knife paused and turned. Without warning, the Clove snapped the flat edge of the blade away and bolted into the opposite direction. "All yours!" he shouted, over the sound of the pounding hooves. The unicorn impaled the first hunter and rent his body so violently that he disappeared in a frothy red mist of blood. The hunters scattered, shrieking in terror as they fled for their lives, but the unicorn pursued them and trampled them with her hooves and disemboweled them with their blood-soaked horn as they tried to escape. Some of them knew better than to try and outrun the creature. Instead, they used their quickness to their advantage and darted through the large trees, making it nearly impossible for the mare to run them down. The clove turned back and saw only two had managed to keep up with them. Judging by the screams and the very distinctive sound of shattering bone, that the others weren't so lucky. The clove noticed one of the hunters was just a lad. He was holding a long coil of rope. "Give me your rope," the clove commanded. The tall lad stood panting against a tree trunk. He quickly handed the coil of rope over and gasped, "What are we going to do?" The clove snatched the rope from the lad and climbed up into the tree. The boy quickly followed, but his friend was not tall enough to reach the branches. "Hey, wait! Help me!" he shrieked in terror. All the screams had gone silent, and they could hear the unicorn's hooves beating the earth louder and louder as it thundered into their direction. The clove let down the rope and hurriedly pulled the terrified hunter into the safety of the tree. Their eyes locked on one another, and for a brief moment an unspoken, odd sort of truce was quickly made with a mere nodding of a head. "Here it comes!" the young lad shouted from the branch overhead. The clove turned to look and growled, "The damn thing is insane! Why is it chasing us?" He got no reply, for at that moment the unicorn rounded the corner. Its snow-white mane was gleaming with crimson flecks of blood, and her hooves were soaked in red mildew and gore. The unicorn quickly spotted the men in the tree and charged. "Oh no, it's going to bring the tree down!" the young lad wailed in terror, as the unicorn pummeled the trunk with its hooves. 2 branches down, both the clove and the hunter beside him shook their heads in annoyance. "Oh, the tree's not going to fall, you idiot! We have the creature exactly where we want it!" the old hunter grunted as he stroked his dark beard and grinned. The clove frowned at this. "What do you mean, we?" he interjected. "Yes, my strange yellow-eyed friend, you have made the team and are entitled to all the fortune and benefits once we capture this beastie," he declared jovially. The clove grinned. "Oh, great. How do we put this thing out of our misery?" he growled as he searched for a way down. He wasn't entirely sure if the unicorn was after him, but after seeing what it had done to everyone else, he wasn't going to risk it. The hunter shook his head and explained, "Oh no, it's worth more to us alive. I want the unicorn to intact and breathing," he insisted. The clove gave him a blank look. "Your men just got slaughtered by that thing," the clove exclaimed. Obviously the nice fairy tales about the unicorns was all just that, fairy tales. Anybody who might have said otherwise, the clove now knew probably wasn't alive anymore. He didn't want anything to do with the insane creature. If only he had been able to pick up a bow from the fallen hunters, he would have shot the damned creature himself in a heartbeat. "Ha ha! That's true. But our salary just quadrupled. Welcome to the team. My name's Jack, and there is Shorty," Jack declared, pointing to the terrified youth clinging to the branches above him. The clove ran a hand through his short black hair and asked, "How much are we talking about?" "Oh, well, how much gold can you fit in your pockets?" Jack inquired. The clove's bright yellow eyes lit up, and he grinned. "What's your plan, Chief?" he laughed. "All right, on my command, we're both going to rope it and tie it to the tree," he announced. The clove nodded and prepared his lasso. "Ready? Go!" Jack shouted, throwing his lasso around the unicorn's neck. I've got her! I've got her! I've got her! The unicorn reared back on her hind legs and whipped her head back with such a force that it sent Jack flying through the air. The clove turned just in time to see Jack's boots as he was crashed into the thick undergrowth. "Help! Help! My leg! My leg!" Jack shrieked. The clove cursed out loud. He didn't have time because the unicorn had wheeled around as it was prepared to crush the injured man in the undergrowth. "I'd better get a damned raise," he muttered under his breath, and with a great war cry, the clove leapt out of the tree right onto the mare's back. He slipped the lasso around the unicorn's neck. For a moment, the creature froze as if in shock. The clove himself clung onto the mare's neck, petrified, in pure terror. He had never ridden before in his life, not even a mule. And now he was on top of an insane, bloodthirsty unicorn. The unicorn's head swiveled around. The clove gulped as he saw a large black eye staring at him. Suddenly, he heard a very sharp, intrusive voice ringing into his head. "Get off me, you filthy beast!" The clove's eyes widened in shock and horror. "You can talk?" he gasped. "Foolish dragon sprite! Of course I can talk! Get off!" The clove tightened his grip on the mare's mane. The thought of letting go was almost laughable. "You'll kill me!" he protested. "Consider it mercy, foolish boy," she hissed inside his head, causing him to wince, and then the game was on. The unicorn reared up on her hind legs and began to buck and prance. The clove shouted in terror. "What do I do?" "Hang on," Jack shouted. Unfortunately, before Jack could come up with any better advice, the unicorn bolted into the forest in an all-out sprint. Branches whipped across the clove's face and cut his arms, but he held on. Out of nowhere came a great white owl, screeching as it swooped down and pecked at the unicorn's eyes. The mare reared up and made a sharp turn to the right, hoping to escape the bird. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, dragon spawn!" the unicorn cursed. The clove only laughed. He could hear the mare's breathing getting heavier and heavier as fatigue began to settle in. "Getting tired?" he taunted her out loud. "Damn your ignorance!" the unicorn whinnied as she tried to rally herself to throw off the determined Pyro, but the accursed owl was everywhere, pecking at her, clawing at her ears. Half the time she was running blind. Before she knew it, she was spinning about, lost in large rows of giant, brightly colored tents. The clove laughed and waved to the crowd of the spectators that had gathered to cheer him on. However, he noticed something very, very strange. The ordinary hemp lasso that he had around the mare's neck was now silver and gleamed bright red with bright rubies. A chill ran down his spine. He felt an intense tingling sensation in every fiber of his being. Magic! It was everywhere. So strong he could taste it in his mouth. It nearly made him nauseous. Finally, the mighty unicorn slowed to a stop. "You fool! You fool! You bloody fool, don't you know?" Her voice grew weaker and weaker, and soon the unicorn's proud head drooped in defeat, moments before she collapsed to the ground. The clove was not faring much better. His face was pale. He felt short of breath. Hello, I am the author and narrator of the Dragon Scourge. I hope you've been having fun. If you'd like to read along with us, you can find this book on Amazon. You can find it both in digital and paperback. But if you can't read, that's all right, because we're having more coming up soon. On to part 5. Also, books are kind of the thing of the past. We're going to go audio. And like most musicians, I'm starting to find that, hey, we can't make money selling books. We gotta make money either advertising or selling merchandise. And so, if you're interested, your advertisement could be here or there. And please like and subscribe. But we're not doing this for the money. We're doing this for fun. For the thrill of it, I am just one person with a microphone. That's it. I don't have anything fancy. Just a microphone and sometimes a mostly quiet house. So yeah, you can contact me via the Dragon Scourge. TheDragonScourge at gmail.com. I don't know what will come of this. Maybe nothing. Maybe something. Maybe I'll make my mommy proud. Or who knows. But I've been having fun. If you're having fun, we're both having fun. You've gotten this far. Up next is part 5 of the Dragon Scourge. Or Scourge, depending if you say schedule or schedule. Either way, no judgment here.